Okay, so the recording is now going. Does anyone want to make a public comment? Okay, not seeing any hands. I think I would just say, I want to just tell you all that I've been trying to do my best as a chairperson, as a member of the council, and it's not easy often to try to balance all the perspectives and all the voices, but I'm trying to learn and kind of use my analytical mind in order to make a determination which I think is best for the council and what I'm kind of reading from the council and from the public. And so thank you for your patience and in participating in this learning experience. For all of us, I think it's a learning experience. So that's my public comment. And if there's no other hands, we can go on to the first item, which was Ken Dami, he works for the Phillips 66 refinery. He wanted to come to the full board in December to make a presentation. I told him to go to a committee first, and originally I think he was going to go to sustainability, but they weren't having their meeting. So then I offered this committee for him to make a presentation to us. And let's see who's in the waiting room. I'm going to see if maybe that's him. Oh, that's Jason Herring. Okay, let me. Okay, so he's not here though. And so I think he could make the presentation perhaps at the next sustainability committee or not, or our committee if the scheduling is better for him. But let's move on to the next item then. And I think it's mitigation on various port issues. And I think committee member Pat Nave had some sort of a document he wanted us to look at. And so I'll see if I can do some sharing. I don't know if he can, if I make him a co-host, he might be able to share. If he wants
Jason,
to share something.
Ask Jason if you could do it because the technology is kind of beyond me.
Okay.
Jason, if you can put it up, it would be great.
Yeah, you just make me a co-host and I can share.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so now you should be able to share then.
Okay, hey, great. This is tonight to be like kind of the first step of what I think is going to take, several months and involve the committee and the council and hopefully other neighborhood councils too, and coming up with some matters that we can ask the port to address over a period of time. As most of you know, mitigation measures are specific kinds of things that an applicant for a project in the port can be asked to do to take care of identified environmental impacts like traffic or air pollution or other things. And again, thinking about this over a period of time and having, and working with this for a period of time, I've kind of divided in my mind mitigations into two groups, two kinds of things. One is kind of policy things, and that's the first item here, the policy mitigation measures. And then the second group are kind of curative things, things that have happened around the port that affect our lifestyle, and they are the result of decisions that the port has made in how in their projects and how they construct things. Actually, I think I want to go to the second group first. That would be the mitigation measures related to passport construction. We're so used to some of these things that we probably haven't thought about them as being choice matters. Choices that the port has made in constructing things. I'll use Gibson Boulevard as an example. The port 40 years ago or so took down a mountain where Wilmington and San Pedro Road was and moved it back and constructed John Gibson Boulevard. And when they did that, they had it declared as a scenic highway, but then they put big power poles and light poles and things along the curbs, and some of them are actually in the sidewalk that's along there. That would be, yeah, one more down there. Yeah, so we end up with, in their own terminals, what the port has done is they put the utilities underground because, you don't want the jitneys and the top loaders and stuff like that having to maneuver around poles and things. But when they get to the boundary between the community and the terminals, they instead of basementing the utilities, they created power poles. And this one, I call this the channel and Gibson Boulevard statue. It has what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 crossbars on it, 11, 12 crossbars on it. Because you get a lot of utility lines that run around. Those could be basemented. And so for a number of years, we've asked the port, hey, look, there's mitigation on a particular project. How about basementing the utilities along Gibson Boulevard? That's one example of a choice that has been made. Jason, can you scroll back up to the roadways? Yeah, the port constructs terminals to withstand 60,000 pound wheel loads because that's, containers on chassis and things like that. Steel trucks and whatnot need that kind of resistance and capability. But a standard city street is constructed to 35,000 pound wheel loads. And what happens is then when the trucks come out of the terminals and go on the streets, here's one at Channel Street, Gibson Boulevard. I can scroll down just a little bit. The port occasionally will come around. They used to resist fixing the streets. Here's a street they actually constructed, and since they built Gibson Boulevard, they've kind of learned their lesson. And like Bridges Boulevard, for example, is constructed to much heavier weights and has a fabric mesh under it so that it's going to last a while and be able to withstand wheel loads. But there's a lot of streets in and around the area on Harbor Boulevard, right by the Vincent Thomas Bridge, for example, is in pretty bad shape. Cynthia, do you have a question right now?
I have a couple of them. Do we know what's underneath the street? Because can they actually put that much more road or whatever they do to support the 60,000 pounds you said? And if that road is cracking like that, how much damage is that going to do below the road and to whatever's down there?
The primarily the construction issues on weight bearing for roads has to do with the base underneath, whether you put a 14-inch or a 12-inch or an 8-inch CMB, crushed miscellaneous base underneath it, and then 6 inches of pavement on top of it. So they can dig it out and then put, a good CMB base under it and so forth, and so make it stronger. The other thing is, let me call your attention to the rail tracks there. When the railroad abandons a line, they try to do it by abandoning it in place and just taking the tracks out and not taking out the ties, the railroad ties that are underneath it. What happens if they do that is they pave it over a little bit, but then it also always cracks and becomes in horrible condition. So in those cases, the port sometimes makes a conscious decision to let them do that. Occasionally, with a little bit of pressure and community requests, they will require that the ties come out too. And that's happened on Gaffey Street over by DeCarlo's Bakery. They did make them take out the ties there. Do you have another question right now?
Those are the two questions I had. Sorry, I'll take my hand down.
No, that's okay. Raise your hand and I'll answer them as we go. A third one that's down there, if you can go down a little bit further, Jason.
Oh, I did have another question.
Yeah.
On that telephone pole,
Uh-huh.
we had an earthquake and that thing came down. Couldn't that start a lot of fires?
Yeah, I
Because
suppose it could. I don't know. I hadn't thought about that.
that's
I will
really
tell you-
dangerous during an earthquake, I would think,
I would
with that
say,
many lines.
starting about 1941 up until about 1974, the port actually required the telephone company to put in what is called four-chamber conduit lines. There were clay conduit lines, and they ran all kinds of telephone lines and other kind of communication cables and electrical lines through there. Then they quit doing that. But that's what they do in their terminal areas. They could do it as well out on the boundaries where the port interfaces with the community. To me, it's a community impact, a community aesthetic impact, and something that you know, if you look at a rendering or a model of some project or something, you might notice this next time something comes up before Planning and Land Use Committee or some of the other committees. A model of a new project never has power poles or light poles or telephone poles, or they have light poles, but no telephone poles and no electrical poles anywhere to be seen in it. And they, people understand that it's not a very appealing
Right.
structure to have. Ready to go down to the aesthetic ones, the cranes. The container cranes, they're worse now than they used to be. I think the port actually, we've been harping on this for so long. I think they actually have started doing that with some cranes to make them so they blend into the sky a little better. Not all of them. Particularly in the West Basin, up around Costco and China Shipping and Yangming and there. I think there's about 40 cranes in there. It almost looks like a World War II construction yard. I mean, you come down the freeway, it really looks very industrial and not doesn't blend in particularly well. So we've asked in the past, I said, it really doesn't cost you a single penny because you paint these cranes about every 3 years anyway. Just paint them a different color, let them blend in. And Massport, the Massachusetts Port Authority actually had, for a while anyway, they don't right now, I don't think. For a while, they had a painting palette that was required for the terminal operators in the port. Some of the cranes, a lot of the cranes, the port actually paints and then bills the tenant for painting them on what's called an accommodation work order. So they could pick a light gray or something like that, or some of them the Hanjin terminal cranes are kind of red and yellow striped ones, and what's the other one that's on the other side of the channel? The green. The green
Oh,
one.
yeah, the green ones.
Yeah. Why am I blanking on their name?
Evergreen.
Yeah, Evergreen. Thank you. Yeah. So there's.
Thanks, Jason.
They got. My design sense is horrible, but they probably, Port probably has some people that can advise them on, coming up with a paint palette for cranes that would make the place a little more aesthetic. The fourth one, if we can move on, is the railroad horn noise one. Issues Committee was looking at this for a while. This is a the rule is that the railroad the federal government has railroad rules, and those rules are the ones that you have to go by. But the railroad rules actually have provisions in them for creating quiet zones for railroads. And there are two ways to do it. One is to install extra crossing protection. Right now, if you come up to a crossing, like let's say like the entrance into the China Shipping terminal, there's a cross arm that comes down, and for traffic going the other way, there's a cross arm across from it, so that the railroad line is blocked off. But what happens is that they say, okay, a car could go around the first one and around the second one, and bypass it and create an accident. So the railroads are still required to blow two longs, a short and a long. And I think it's 107 or 117 decibels that they have to blow them to blow their horns. And so there's a procedure in the law for creating a quiet zone. There's also another way of doing it where you have a kind of a speaker phone kind of by the crossing, so it's just a local impact, and they don't hear it all over the community. There are 58 quiet zones in the state of California where quiet zones have been established. There's only one in Los Angeles County. It's in Glendale. And a lot of the cities like Sacramento, Fresno, and others that have rail yards and so forth have quiet zones that have been established so that the horns don't have to blow. So this to me is a conscious choice that the port made, because the port owns all the rail lines and is responsible for all the crossings south of Sepulveda in the port area. And they made a conscious choice when they built a terminal like the Yangming terminal in Costco. There at Gibson and also at Figueroa are probably the two noisiest ones that impact us here locally, to just do the two yard arms on either, the two crossing arms on either side. And they could have put in the extra crossing zone. So a few years ago, they actually started working on that with the council office, and they got funding for 5, and then the city administration changed hands and the project was dropped. Those 5 were going to go in Wilmington, where it's even more impacted than we are. You know, I haven't heard the rail horns too much lately, but as the 24-hour terminals increase and stuff, we're going to hear more and more of them, because every time an engine comes up to a crossing, when they're assembling a train, for example, a unit train, they are required to blow their horns. So that's a number 4. The 5th one that's listed here.
Greg, have you been hearing horns?
I have. Some years ago,
I did too. I've been hearing them lately, but not as often.
yeah, I don't know if this is a case where because I will tell you this, when Geraldine Nance was the executive director, the horns were so loud, and at 2 o'clock in the morning, at 4 o'clock in the morning, when they were assembling trains, that I would send her an email to her home and to her office telling her, okay, here's the horns and so forth. And it got to be so bad that I started to, she actually came over and sat with us at lunchtime just so she could hear them and how loud they were. You know, the first step in doing all this is to do a study and see how often they're blowing and see if they can work out some matter. If they can't do it, they can create the quiet zone. They can put in the extra crossing arms so that they don't have to blow their horns. They could have done it at the outset, and they could retrofit them now to do it. So that's what that item is about. And number 5, the industrial uses of vacant lots in the Wilmington area. The port, probably 40 years ago, had a program that they adopted to acquire property as it became available in Wilmington, and they were authorized to buy without having to come back to the board at appraised value any vacant lot that came up for sale south of Anaheim Street and west of Avalon. And so for a number of years, they did that. There's a lot of vacant lots over there. If you drive around, you can see them. They'll have a Port of Los Angeles sign on the fencing. They took them off the tax rolls, and then mostly they maintain them. Sometimes they don't. And I have heard that they are renting some of them now for container storage in what are otherwise residential areas. So this is one where we would be saying, hey, do a survey, come up with a list and see what you can do. Maybe you need to put them up for sale, let somebody else buy them and, do something with them. So and let me go back up to point one of the policy issues, Jason, at the outset. In addition to these kind of remedial ones that I've noticed or have been bugging me, there's two policy ones that I think we could advocate for. One is what are called overriding considerations. This is an environmental law term, and what it means is that if you have a project and the project applicant does everything that is reasonably possible, and reasonably is the key word there, to mitigate any adverse impacts. And let's take air emissions from trucks, for example. A terminal operator says, okay, I can put in yard equipment that is propane operated or electric. I can do natural gas trucks and so forth, but I can handle 80% of the increase in air emissions. And I can buy some air emissions, lawnmowers or dry cleaners in Altadena or what have you, to lessen it. But if they can't address everything, excuse me, they can come up with what's called a statement of overriding considerations. And this is a way of saying, hey, there's going to be a lot of jobs produced here. This is a necessary industry. Yeah, there's going to be some impacts that we cannot reasonably mitigate. So we want you to adopt a statement of overriding considerations and approve the project anyway. This has been a sore point for a long time. And what I'm suggesting here is I think there is a way around it. The port, one way of viewing the port is that it is basically a partner of a terminal operator. Let's say a terminal operator comes in, and the port and the terminal operator, they figure out a formula for making it a feasible project, economically and so forth. But the port has other places that the project applicant can't go to mitigate all of its environmental impacts. It can't go to a neighboring terminal, for example, or to another dock that the port operates or something like that. But the port could, and the port could say, okay, the 10% excess emissions or the 10% increase in cancer risk or something, we can mitigate those someplace else in the local community so that the terminal, the project mitigates all of its environmental impacts. So I think this one would probably best be addressed by changing a couple of words in the laws to define who the applicants are in a project. That's one. Another one, the second policy is a fairly new one. The city council in November adopted a resolution calling for the transition to 100% zero emission shipping at the Port of Los Angeles. And I think there's an addendum to that to talk about zero emissions for trucks as well. And this is something for 2030. There's an international convention too that's called for the creation of corridors, shipping corridors, zero emission shipping corridors in the United States, and the United States signed that convention. So that's a second policy. So going forward, that's my presentation on those matters. But going down, Jason, could you go down to the bottom, the last section of the memo here? Going forward, I think I would like to see if there's additional ideas, or maybe these ideas need to be changed or something. I would like to see some additional ideas from all of us, and not right now, because, some things probably have occurred to you. If you have something right now, yeah, let's hear them. But I think maybe issues and maybe planning and maybe environmental sustainability committee might have some ideas also. We can add them to them. And I think I'd like to say, then we'd go to the neighborhood council and say, hey, here's some that we want to adopt or suggest that we would then include in our comments of that when we respond to port environmental documents. You want to comment now, Christian, or you can finish these 5 items right here?
Yeah, I would just say that regarding those 2 policies that you mentioned, I those sound good, and I think we should support them, and perhaps we could agendize those in the future.
Uh-huh.
Regarding just having more ideas, I think that's also good, and I think that we should report to the full board about that in January, and then also reach out to issues and sustainability, and then have that continuing discussion here as well. And then also, the land thing really resonated with me regarding Wilmington, and I think it would be a good idea, perhaps, if we reach out to the Wilmington Neighborhood Council, and maybe we could have a joint meeting, either formally or informally, depending on how many of us are there. And then maybe we have some sort of a joint statement or a joint resolution, or just at least see where they're at on it, and then figure out if we want to support what they're doing or go our own way.
What do you think of the 5 going forward points? Does this make sense to you, all of you actually, as to a way to proceed, or do we change the order of things? Or
Actually, there's a lot of this that I see that's wrong. Starting with your beginning where you're saying you're trying to make lessers and the lessee equally culpable, and then you're conflating. Knox units are not bought from lawnmowers and stuff like that. There's an active marketplace for that. So
right.
your beginning is, it's trying to conflate a bunch of things that aren't being mitigated the way you seem to make them to be. But lessers and lessees have always been separated out because, it's you can't make the port responsible. They less it the people who do their project. They meet their rules and they go forward. I mean, this trying to, they need to do a new EIR or stuff like that. It's just not making sense. And it's trying to make people who are trying to do ongoing businesses always having to look behind them. It's really hard to do business that way when people keep trying to change things. But going, more so on this stuff is I'm really in question of, if looking at individual mitigations instead of trying to change the policy overall. We passed and talked to the port endlessly about, the quiet railroad crossings, and we've never gotten anywhere.
Right.
So at what point are we going to, we keep concentrating time on it. I think issues just spent probably 3 months on it. What we really need to do is identify areas that we really can make a difference in and work on those instead of saying, oh, look, the street cracks here. Well, maybe what we're working with is the wrong department, not the port, but we need to start working with the street repair.
Uh-huh.
It's, it's like going, we tend to go after the port and not sit there and say, well, there's other departments that are responsible here.
The port actually has come up as several times, and I think they've got one that they're working on now, where they have gone out into the community and fixed the streets. I remember a $6 million repaving project in Wilmington some years ago, I hear what you're saying in terms of lessor lessee responsibilities, that type of thing. Let me give you an example. For many years, the port said we can't do anything about truck emissions. And then a fellow named Tom Warren, who was a labor leader and was on the board of Harbor Commissioners, and said, this doesn't make any sense to me. And he started working with the Teamsters and with the truckers and everything. And out of that came the Clean Air Action Plan, which has had a remarkable impact on air quality in the basin and in the local area. So, and that's, they did it by saying to the terminal operators, contract with people who have post 1997 trucks, and let's have some clean air programs for alternative energies, for natural gas trucks and propane yard equipment, electric yard equipment. So I hear what you're saying. A couple of other questions here, Christian and Tom Norman.
Yeah, go ahead, Tom.
Okay, thanks for the presentation and thanks everyone for the comments. My suggestion is there's a lot of good things to look at. I'm educating myself on them, and I don't have the history of what we've tried and hasn't worked, but I do have the history of when you have such a long list, it's typically more effective to break them down into subcommittees. So maybe we could pick, and prioritize a few of these and put certain individuals to research and just make some sustained, process, steps as Craig had suggested, and kind of, realistically see which ones are going to go further. And I'm hoping some of the port officials might then, as we're prepared, come and engage with us too, to help us estimate that. I don't think any of us want to spend time just discussing and complaining about things. And I think we want to, tack according to which ones we can try to realistically, make some progress, or at least feel that the people are heard. So that's my suggestion I wanted to get in as we're having this discussion. Thank you.
I had a couple of commissioners say to me that they have basically 30 meetings left, and they're starting to think about what their legacy is going to be, and they want to know what impact are they going to have and leave on the community. And I think that if we can present a program to them that has the buy-in of other neighborhood councils, particularly Wilmington and Coastal, that I think that they might very well listen to it, and they're free to pick and choose among these for the ones that they want to fund and put on the drawing board.
Maybe we can get like issues and sustainability to help us to check out some of the areas too.
Yeah, I agree.
Or, yeah.
And, when you guys drive around and stuff like that, you see something, we've kind of grown up here in this area, and so we kind of accept it. It's the way it is, and haven't really thought about why is it that way. Why do we have this designated scenic highway of Gibson Boulevard with such, really unpleasant or really ugly kinds of things, when they could have put the utilities underground. I don't know, so if you notice things like that,
Well, if you look at, for example, like El Segundo in Manhattan Beach, where they have the refinery and the water treatment plant, you can't see that from the streets all around there. You can be in a nice neighborhood and it's completely visually shielded, so you don't even see that stuff, right? Much less power lines, you can't even see a lot of the industrial equipment because they've done hedging and trees and things, so you don't have to look at it. So even to some extent, we could do that here to make, like you say, a scenic drive slightly less like, I don't know, driving through a horrific industrial wasteland.
I
Right.
don't know. Chevron, I've seen for years. I lived down that way, and you've always saw the stuff sticking up from it. And I remember taking tours of the power plant. There were always long lines and stuff. But regardless of that, I mean, there's only so much we can, as Thomas said, there's only so much we can bite off and do. And it's, are we going to get them to underground everything today? No, but can we look at, but when they do new projects, we can get them to do that.
Right.
So, but how do we, the real thing is to say, okay, going forward, you have projects what we really would like you to do is have these things in these projects. And instead of, get that up in front, instead of trying, because when you comment about stuff afterwards, those things are pretty set. But when you get them to say, oh, well, yeah, we could make that a requirement going up front. This, it's like when you go to planning, they give you whole list of things you have to do. And I know when they put this stuff out, they do it. So I think it's more important to find the way to get the port to put this in on the new projects, and then figure out how to make, when they make changes to existing stuff, whether they will go and redo that.
Does that fall under the fourth one there, that present the mitigation program to harbor commissioners, get them to be aware of our concerns? No, not that one. At the bottom.
I think I'm looking more at saying, well, who do we talk to, and how do they set up? Not so much, wouldn't be mitigation. This would be, these are the standards. If you're gonna redo this street, we want you to underground the electric lines.
Right.
If you're gonna build, if you're gonna put in a new railroad crossing, we want it to be a quiet crossing. The mitigation is saying you're doing something, and what I'm saying is the way to get this is to get them to agree to do this in all new projects.
And what's important to them, and or maybe I've got a note that my internet connection is unstable, so if I disappear, I'll have to go into Diana's office and see if I can connect.
Why don't you talk to those other people you talked to that said that they wanted to, and that they were retiring in 30 months? Would they know who to talk to?
Well, they are the ones. The Harbor Commission is a unique organization. There are 3 commissions in the city of Los Angeles that are the legal actual heads of their departments and have control over their own money. And the Harbor Department is one of them. The Harbor Commission is one of them. So those 5 commissioners are the legal head of the department. The general manager is required to follow their instructions.
Okay.
And they have the money to do these things.
Okay.
That's a good question. Kristen has his hand up. You have a question for me?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I don't think the two political strategies are mutually exclusive. I think we can work on things that need to be mitigated, and we can also work on suggestions or policy proposals for future projects, so that it's, as Craig said, baked in, and so that when they're gonna redo that street, they already know that there are some guidelines. But I think that it's kind of like the nature of society that oftentimes we build a project or we build infrastructure, and then we don't really know the implications of it, and then future generations will have to look at it and figure out, well, it seems like that was producing a really negative effect, and so maybe we should try to mitigate it or to redo it. And so I think that we can do both. It's just kind of a matter of month to month, and as time goes by, figuring out which one we want to.
Well, for example, if you say, I'd like all the streets at the port, when you reduce street, to be able to support 65,000 pounds. And so here's the 2B, and then we can see what the S is. And then if there's mitigations, we can when can we bring this up to the standard that we set, right? 65,000 pound street with underground utilities, for example. That's what we'd like to see going forward. And then how can we retrofit what's there, which is now becoming into disrepair, which is causing other problems with traffic and potholes and damage to, local vehicles and things like this.
Right. That's going to come up in the special meeting too. And I think it's Craig is right. Certainly, we can ask for these things as we go. For that project, as we'll get to, has 446 truck trips a day on Gibson Boulevard, and certainly we can say, hey, fix the street. You've all been across the railroad tracks there, where Channel and Gibson meet, and further on down where Pacific Avenue comes in and stuff like that. They could be fixed up quite a bit. Anyway,
Well,
what,
It's, my comment is it's usually easier to fix things, get people to do stuff going forward than it is to get people to do things afterwards.
we can do both, though. I think it's certainly we give them the choice. We're not making the choices for them. They're going to make the choices, Greg, when they do their budgeting every year. But I'd certainly like to see something before them that they can say to them, hey, the 4 neighborhood councils and maybe 5 with Harbor City in the area have these impacts that they've noticed from things. Can we pick some, put them into the capital improvement project budget, which is about $200 million a year in the port.
So it's almost 7:15. I think that if we want to hear one more comment, we certainly could, and then maybe we could entertain a motion to adjourn and then to reconvene as the special committee meeting.
Okay, I'd like to hear from you as maybe as a last comment, just where do you want to go from here, Christian? You want us, if you want, I'll go to the issues committee and the other committees and say, hey, we're talking about these things. What do you see? And what are your thoughts? And then take it to the executive committee and to the board. After that, maybe we can get the board by February with that.
I think let's make a report. I would suggest that we make a report in January just on what we're doing and the ideas that we have so far. We could keep it pretty concise. And then, yes, immediately start reaching out to the issues and sustainability committees and ask them to work on those things. And then at our next port committee, maybe we could have some action items on specific things, or if anyone has some ideas on proposing things for future projects, we could have certainly one item on that as well. So I think our goal should be at our next port committee to have one item that we can kind of delve into deeper on the topics that Pat brought up, and then maybe one item on kind of like a future project or a future policy that we could suggest for new projects. So maybe we could do 1 and 1 at our next meeting, and then I don't know, maybe some other topics will come up. It's hard to predict with the EIRs that come out.
I think we can send this on for comment to the other committees and see if they want to comment and bring it back to us in January.
That'd be an idea. Have them come to talk to us about it.
Well, we could just send it. I mean, all of them have meetings. We can send this. I mean, and say this was entertained at Port. Do you have any input? And then go from there. I mean, we need to refine this because it's pretty. It's not real succinct in certain places, and we need to make, I always find that if you cut your goals down and do 2 and then come back and do 2 more and then come back and 2 more, you can get a lot more accomplished than trying to do 10 and pick from one item to the other.
Well, we also have to pick the ones that we know in a timely manner too, that they follow through. We can't have one, and after we get that one done, then we can't do this one because this one's already done.
Hey, Craig, I'd be happy to you take this and do a redraft on it. Be happy to take a look at it.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, very good. So is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Motion.
Second,
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. It was moved by Craig Goldfarb, seconded by Thomas Norman to adjourn this regular port committee. So all in favor of adjourning? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so this meeting is adjourned and we're adjourning to the special meeting now. So let us call the special meeting to order. And I believe we should always have an opportunity for public comment. I don't think there's anyone that's not on the committee here, but does anyone from the committee want to give any kind of public comment? That's on, not an agenda item. Okay, in that case, we'll move right into the topic, and again, Pat, if you'd like to introduce it, go ahead.
This is a, I don't know, Jason, can you put up that one? I forgot to ask you if you could put this one up.
Oh, that might take me a bit to find.
Well, okay,
Did you email that to me?
yeah, I think it's out there. I can pretty much talk on it without having it up. It's a negative declaration, which is a type of environmental document that says there are no significant adverse impacts, or no significant foreseeable adverse impacts for this project. And the project that's being proposed is an 18.66 acre container storage lot alongside Gibson Boulevard, between Gibson and the 110 freeway, and northerly of the police station along Gibson Boulevard. It's a private owner. The port is involved in it because it's in the port master planning area for some reason. And so the environmental work had to be done.
So Pat, all I have is this email, the text here. I don't have a document from you. Is this all that you sent?
No,
I don't have a document.
The
Yeah.
document in our details on our website?
The special meeting, does that have it?
The environmental document is on the port's website. I did a preliminary draft. There's a new draft. There's a draft out there. Well, let me see. I would have to minimize the screen. I can pull it up from my file. I don't know how to get it up on the screen here though. Any thoughts on that? On how to do it?
Phone or on the computer?
I'm pulling it up from our calendar agenda.
It comes.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
oh yeah, that's okay.
On the website, that's what I meant to
Yeah.
say.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah,
That was fast.
Jason is a genius as far as I'm concerned. Don't tell him that.
I will keep my mouth quiet.
This is a. I think we all know the area. It's a long narrow strip, and the owner wants to build a parking lot for containers and container chassis. There's a lot of grading that's required. Several 30-foot high retaining walls have to go up because it's cutting into the slope that supports the freeway. And then he's going to put concrete paving on about 403,000 square feet of a little over 9 acres of land there, and then he'll plant the slopes there on what's, it's got to be Caltrans right away. I'm assuming.
I would think, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you.
It did look like his property to me, and that it sounded like from the documentation that he was gonna landscape in front also.
Yeah,
So
probably.
there would be landscaping that behind the facility, they were gonna have to build retaining walls. And then on the street, but it also came up with, because there's lead in the
In the ground?
ground, that they're gonna have to do remediation. And there was an extensive part about the soil remediation and that it would be brought back. It was one of the reasons why I was like, oh, we want this because it's been sitting open for years with lead contamination. So, and of course, one of the, besides the remediation and soil removal there, they will be paving it over. So that sort of like double seals it. And this area is really blighted. It's, the homeless move in there every once in a while, but they don't stay. But everything there has been, even the soil analysis shows that all the soil there was brought in when they did the freeway.
So it was just left over from the freeway?
Yeah,
Rubble then.
well, it was, I don't know how they built the freeway, but all that land, this has just been sitting there. There was some access road there to get to the two towers. I'm sorry, the cell towers
Yeah.
that have been abandoned. So, I mean, this is
Well,
really, it's a nice remediation.
Well,
And
if that's what they really do. There's lead in the soil, and there's also volatile organic compounds and also total hydrocarbon product in the land. There's two wells from the old Western fuel oil site that used to be across the freeway from them, because covering up remediation sites is one way of doing it. The problem is that sometimes the stuff gets in the water table and also migrates off the premises too. Yeah, Cynthia.
Those wells, were they underground wells? Were they filled them with cement, or were they above ground and the oil or the gasoline went into the ground?
Or test wells
Oh,
to test for how the contamination is doing in the area.
how well or how badly?
How badly? Yeah, that's not an uncommon thing. I mean, Harbor Highlands over here off of Gaffey Street had some for a while because there were tanks there that were leaching, and the cleanup only went to the property line and not to the area. So the area under Gaffey Street and the area under the YNH or YNS Auto remains pretty polluted.
Wow.
Anyway, there's a couple of things that stood out to me. One thing that's kind of a concern I think we should be thinking about is that the three projects that we've considered so far, the Starkist demolition project, the Phillips 66 project, and this project are all done on either a mitigated negative declaration or a negative declaration. Certainly the Phillips project and this one in the past would be ones where more environmental evaluation would have been done. And on this one, they've come up with kind of a new approach, and that is to say that there's no negative impact because we're going to comply with all laws in the future. That's not how the environmental laws work. Number two, that just because you comply with all laws in the future does not mean there's no negative impact. The traffic is a good example of that. The vehicle miles traveled standard that is used now to gauge traffic says that there is a significant impact if there's more than 250 car trips a day, but they don't count truck trips. And there's going to be 446 truck trips per day. So complying with that law doesn't do anything for the environmental impact of that many trucks. This is the item, by the way, where I think would be one of the mitigations we could ask for is to say, hey, if you're going to put that many trucks on the street there, then do some remediation on the street itself to handle those wheel loads. Anyway, so the traffic and the pollution contamination. There's some issues on light. There's some issues on stacking. In one place of this ND, a negative declaration, they say they're going to stack 5 high, and that's 42.5 feet, and it's 45 feet is allowed under the code. In another place in the ND, they say they're going to go 6 high, which would take them to 51 feet, which is 5 or 6 feet over the code limit. So, I mean, there's a few issues on lighting, you know, with high mass lighting. Is it going to be shining in the eyes of the, you know, are you going to be able to do the down, you know, show us your plan for the downdraft lighting so that there's no light shining in the eyes of people on the freeway, stuff like that. And, you know, what are you going to do? Let's see a better traffic plan when it actually takes into account and studies the impact of the 446 truck trips per day. So those are kind of the other issues. There's a few others. I think they're aware of the congestion issues because there's going to be a right turn only entrance into this, which means that all the trucks are going to be approaching from the north, and then all of the trucks are going to be exiting from it to the south. So it's going to be right turn only in and right turn only out of
Good.
this property.
Peter would be happy.
Who, Peter?
Peter Burmeister would be happy you said that.
Oh, right turns and right turns only? Yeah, it just means that, you know,
Safety.
what kind of traffic patterns are we looking at? What's going to happen to the channel and Gibson stoplight? You know, what's the impact on emergency exits by the police? How do they commented on fire trucks and stuff. They didn't say anything about the police impact on police access. So those are the comments. I don't have a real, if I would say, make a recommendation on this, I would say, try and get a 30-day extension on this so that it can actually get to the, you know, we can have a little time to actually see what it is that we want to say in a final form, and then get it to the board, say at the February meeting, be able to do it that way. Otherwise, I know I said in here when it's up at the top, Jason, about when the comment period expires. I think it's January 17th. I'm not sure.
So you think it would be best to an extension?
It is expiring
I
January.
mean, you know, just go ahead and ask for a 90-day extension and see what they give you.
They've been giving us 30 days, or they give us 15 on one and 30 on the other, on the Phillips.
I mean, yeah, but we put it that we can do to a 90-day. But my thing is, I don't see much that I don't see anything wrong with this program. And I think, you know, if we're just gonna comment, it's, you know, the stuff you're commenting on, I personally don't see anything really that egregious in this project.
So,
that
so
it's-
right now, that's not a major on-ramp for much of the port container traffic, but this is gonna force those 446 trucks to use that intersection in particular, which they're not using today. Now that's 446 per day. That's like one every minute and a half, right? So how many are gonna
Wow.
be stacked up at each light? I mean, that's a lot, right? And that whole road could get backed up there, and that's, you know, the connectivity between Wilmington and San Pedro and the whole waterfront there. That's a big impact.
Yeah, and if they're backed up, then it's all that pollution just sitting all around everybody too.
Yeah.
That's no small thing.
I mean, at this point, you know, where you sit there and say no small thing, it's all that traffic is coming through the port right now.
On different
Got it.
intersections. So now it will come to this one, which brings it closer to places that it has never impacted before.
That traffic is still coming through that intersection.
No, it's not.
They're just coming straight out of the port. Yeah, if you watch them coming out of Yangming and you know, and or coming I can see it from my window. They
I
come
promise you,
across the
there are not 446 trucks using that intersection. There's not one for every minute and a half on entering the freeway on that intersection. I use that intersection constantly.
These are 446 new trips, Craig.
Trips.
But I mean, I'm just, I got a comment here on one thing though. Yes, this is, this is not a comment designed to kill this project at all. It's saying, hey, you've got some impacts here, potentially in the area of pollution, in the area of stormwater runoff, in the area of traffic. What are your plans? If you look at the the negative declaration, for example, on stormwater runoff, they say they're going to put it, from 9 acres. 9 acres is a lot of concrete paving. And you're going to have stormwater runoff there. They say they're going to dump it in the existing storm system. They don't say whether it can handle it or not. They haven't done those calculations. So what are their plans for this? And then if remediation of polluted property, the volatile organic compounds, the total petroleum ones, and then the lead need to be mitigated or remediated. They say that, but if you look at the figures and the files and things like that, they don't include any computations for doing that in their work. So are they really doing it? I don't know. Same thing on the Phillips one, which we commented on too, is they've got a ton of remediation to do, and their work schedule over their 6-year project doesn't have a single line item in there to pay for it or time set aside to do it. So the time to do these studies is when you do the evaluation, you do the environmental analysis, not after the fact.
Yeah,
Well,
but they're
what-
doing the environmental analysis now.
Are they?
That's part of what they said in the thing, that they have to do it and they have to come back to the board before they start.
Well, Okay.
They have to come back 30 days before the start. Part of, this is gonna be an independent contractor that does it. It's not the port that's doing it. So the contractor has to get the permits and has to satisfy the requirements of getting those permits. Part of that is things like you're talking about, where you have to, I've done it before for buildings, because you have to have the runoff, you have to show that you can do it, you have to show that the sewer system can handle whatever you put it there. So, I mean, you have to do all that before they'll allow you to build.
if somebody comes to me and says, I want to borrow your car, may I have it? I'll obey all laws. I don't say, oh, fine, you obey all laws, here's the keys. I say to them, do you have a driver's license? Do you have an insurance? Do you have a DUI on your record? I mean, you answer these questions at the outset. You don't come back later on the promise that you're gonna obey all laws.
It's a non sequitur. You have to do this stuff to get your permits to build.
Well, I just disagree with you on how the environmental laws work.
It's not environmental laws, it's planning and land use. They
Yeah.
have to do all this first.
Well,
If you've ever permitted a building, you have to get the approval, you have to do it. I had to go, when I used to permit buildings for dye houses and stuff, we had to go through the whole process. Sanitation had to sign off on everything. Sanitation in the city of Los Angeles, sanitation in the city of, in the county. These are things you don't, that is part of the process. I mean, it's really onerous. It really takes a lot of time. That's why, people hire, professional companies to take care of a lot of this stuff, because it's really hard. It's included though in that process, planning, that's what they do. That's what it's down to.
everybody should.
Let's take
comply with the environmental
Tom.
law.
now. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, no, I mean, one other thing, if the projection is, 8 months to build, and sometimes these projects, I'm watching the high school, it's not being done on schedule. Things don't always go in the optimistic or desired time frame because of all this, regulation and checking things. I think from a community perspective, I want to think of, what if the backlog gets taken care of in the next 12 months? I know there's some projections it's longer, but this will last, for a long time. So I hadn't heard anybody really, it's on the screen we're seeing here, but, thinking about all the potential negative impacts it'll have if it's only going to really be needed for, 4 months, or, I don't know if the port has ever experienced a backlog like this. And then hopefully if it's not a common thing, we'll never have it again.
They can probably make money on this for a long time.
This is not gonna end tomorrow
Yeah.
or a year from now.
Well, storing empty containers particularly has been an issue for a while in the local area. Um,
Well, hence the properties in Wilmington we were just talking about.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. So,
I
Yeah,
mean, in terms of negative impacts, I mean, for the short, it's gonna mean that they're gonna travel across the street for storage rather than all the way down to Wilmington, Carson, and other places where I've seen they've been doing container storage. I mean, that in itself will be a positive impact.
well, did you notice that, they estimate in the ND that this will have a minimal impact on the neighboring terminals in terms of relieving their stress. So I don't know exactly what the business plan is for these folks in terms of where they're doing it. Maybe they're gonna just, rent space for storing empties or something. Although they're talking about 2,000 containers on the site and 446 truck trips a day, so that would be turning over 25% of it a day.
That's a churn. Yeah, it's quite a bit.
So,
I think their projections are probably way high. But if you put that over a 24-hour period, that's a truck every 3.5 minutes. But they make those projections. My guessing is the way the guy's gonna make money on this is have containers sit there.
oh
Which,
joy, that's what we want in our neighborhood.
well, they're gonna sit somewhere. We want them sitting on the street in Wilmington.
No,
Okay, well, that's where they've been sitting, and we gotta, I mean, I don't see the loss in this because one, we get a place that has pollution in the dirt attended to, we get it covered up, we have this whole area cleaned up to a certain extent.
Mhm.
We can probably as with your connectivity stuff, you can start working on, pushing them to, do certain things, and usually developers want to work with us on, what our interest is. And so we can probably get them to make it look a lot nicer than across the street where nothing was done. Basically, we can have the plannings, etc.
well, this is a scenic highway, yeah, so you got a point there. I, in terms of the environmental law, Craig, I take what you're saying as being, that you're advocating a statement of overriding considerations that, yeah, maybe have some impacts and stuff like that, but you're gonna take care of them, and, we need the containers taken care of. I don't know, Christian has a comment.
Yeah, I think that it looks like there's enough interest in the topic and some potential specific concerns that we should draft those up after we ask for the extension, and then we can discuss something more specific in the future and whether or not we want to vote a certain way to support whatever we draw up. So I think that we can have some back and forth tonight, but I think that without having anything like formally written, I don't know how much more progress we can make today on that. What do you all think?
does anybody else have anything to say on it? Did we talk it out already?
Well, I do, in the past, sometimes, years ago when we had a report committee, because of the time crunches and stuff like that, we would agree on some principles, and then the drafting sometimes would come later, and then the final draft would end up before the board and voted on there. I don't know if that's, I don't think we're at that point where we have a high enough trust level to do that, or that it's really, really needed. At the same time, I'm thinking that we may have all our eggs in one basket of being able to get an extension. If we can't, then it needs to be considered at the board meeting on the 10th, Christian. And so I'm wondering how a placeholder can go on so that it could be heard at that time. I guess it could go on because we're not taking an action on it.
Well, if we
Right.
don't have anything specific tonight, I would probably suggest that we have another special meeting before the next board meeting and before the executive committee, or we could agree that either like a subcommittee work on it or that another committee work on it and present it to the full board then as kind of a backup if we don't get to refine our comments. So I think that there could be three options. We could, like I said, special meeting, delegate it to a subcommittee that would bring it to the full council, or give it to another committee in general, like community
Yeah.
issues or something.
Well, then let's try this. Step one would be to see if we get an extension so that we can, refine the comments. Have time to do that. Second, see what we can do to refine comments. Take it to another committee. I think issues probably will have a meeting. I know planning and land use. And some of these issues, particularly one that's really not in the port, but adjacent to the port, does get into the interest area of some of our other committees. We could do that and still make the board meeting on the 10th, I suppose, if we don't get an extension. Why don't we do that?
That sounds good.
Okay.
I don't know if we need a motion on that or not, but
Motion to adjourn. We don't need a motion on that.
not a motion to adjourn, or you mean a motion on the.
We don't
top?
need a motion on what you just said.
You
It's
can
just
just do what I
discussion.
said.
If you want to take it to land use and planning, you just have to go across the hall.
Is this committee requesting the extension, or are we requesting the,
Yeah, Christian's gonna request the extension, yes?
okay.
I think maybe a motion might be in order here, Christian. And that would be one, try to get an extension. Two, if we can't get an extension, either have a special meeting of this committee or take it to issues or planning or environment and sustainability.
I don't think we need to do a motion to do that. All we gotta do is do it.
We did a
I
motion, if there's a second, then it would be.
Let's-
I
considered.
mean, what I'm saying is all we have to do is request Christian to do the
Extension.
extension, which he's already agreed on. And if you come up with something specific, you can take it to another committee or we can have a special meeting.
I think you're having a discussion on the motion before it's been seconded.
I'm
Let's see what
saying we
Tom-
don't need to have a motion.
He's saying
Let's-
you can just go and do it.
I know what he's
Yeah.
saying, but
Oh.
Norman has-
I made a
Mr.
motion.
Norman.
that is-
Go ahead, Mr. Norman.
I'm trying to understand how the things operate here, if we're gonna discuss the motion that's been made, I guess I'll second to discuss it, but actually would then make an amendment to the motion. I would support the request for the extension, formally by the chair, if that's how we do things. And if that is not granted, I support this committee having a special meeting, but I think it's out of our jurisdiction to say we go somewhere else, right? I think that's what we do individually, but I think we can make motions for what we're all committing to do. So that's what I'm comfortable for. So if Pat's okay with that change in the formal motion, that we, ask one of the chairs to request the extension. If not granted, that chair then seek our schedules to have another special meeting.
Well,
Of the
let-
committee.
Let me make a suggestion, and that would be, I think the full council did give me the authority to just request an extension, and then Craig's right, I already agreed to it. So let me just make the request, no matter what, because it's possible that another neighborhood council might want to give some comment on it anyway, or even a member of the public. So if I make a request and there's an extension, it could not benefit just us. It might benefit more people. So I would like to do that. But a motion might be good in this case just because we're cementing and committing to it. We don't have to. We could keep it fluid. I like fluidity, but I think in this case, maybe we'll want to commit to like either a special meeting, or we could let the executive committee handle it, or maybe like planning and land use. So I think I will make the motion actually, and then you can amend it. So I'm going to move that we set a special, we have a special meeting the day before, or actually, let me say it this way. I move that we have a special meeting within a week of the next executive committee in January to discuss this topic.
I'll second.
That's before the 10th board meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so it's been moved and seconded. So now we can have a discussion on whether we want to have a special meeting or if we want to kick it to another committee. Either way, and then we'll have a vote on, then we'll know like concretely. So
I do have a comment, and but Tom's got his hand raised.
go ahead, Pat, and then we'll have.
That's an old hand.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All of our hands are old hands at this, right?
That's right. You're old.
Well, my first reaction is that the less meetings, the better. And if there's somebody that's already having a meeting, we could take it there in terms of time, but special meetings, okay.
Okay, so we have one person who's sort of a little bit skeptical of the special meeting, but will accept it. And does anyone else prefer a committee over a special meeting? So we have the option of voting this motion down and then letting another committee handle it, or we say that we want to support a special meeting. What does anyone else have to say?
This is only in the contingency if the extension is not granted.
Correct.
Right.
I call the question.
Okay, so if there's no other strong comment on it, we'll have a vote on it. So all those in favor of having a special meeting of the Port Committee within a week of the next executive meeting in
Do you have
January,
any
say aye.
day? Do we have any day?
No,
No, within a week.
yeah, within a week of the next executive committee. I think the executive committee meets on the Monday before
Yes.
the meeting. So I think it meets on the second Monday, the executive committee. So then the next special meeting would be within a week of that. So like, let me look at the calendar real quick. I think it'd be like the week of the 3rd to the 7th probably of January, most likely. So we can all look at our calendars in the future. We don't have to do it tonight because it's the holidays, and I don't know if anyone's going out of town or not going out of town. But just in principle, let's have a vote on that now. So all those in favor of having a special meeting of the Port Committee within a week of the next executive committee, say aye.
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 Okay, any opposed?
I'm opposed only because I think that I know of one meeting that's already scheduled in there. Craig is on that committee too. Planning and land use, and this project involves some planning and land use issues. Generally.
Yeah, that was my
So
question.
we're voting, not, not debating anymore.
I
well, he said-
abstain. I abstain. I don't really care either way. What do you guys
Okay,
want to meet?
So that's 1, 2, 3 for it, 1 abstention. And
opposed.
1 no.
Right.
And then point of information, isn't that independent? Can't things go to other committees anyway in spite of this?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanna make sure.
Anything can go to any committee.
yeah, so
Okay.
now we'll have an email chat, and then we'll figure out if we're gonna have a meeting, what day we should have it, and maybe it could even happen at the same day of the planning committee. Maybe it could happen right after it or right before it. Maybe that would work for more people. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what
I
Hey,
mean,
long-
this shouldn't take more than 15 minutes, but, okay.
Okay,
Motion to adjourn?
I second the motion. All those in favor of adjourning, say aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Okay, we're adjourned.
All right,
Good
well,
to
I'm
speak.
Good night, everyone.
And
very,
look forward-
happy holidays, Merry Christmas. and Glad to see
Happy
everybody
holidays.
working so hard this week.
Night, everyone.
Take
All
care.
right.
Good night.
everyone.
Take care.